I've done the world's longest economy flight, New York to Singapore with Singapore Airlines, but that plane doesn't have economy seats. It doesn't really count, right? So this week, let's go and do the world's longest economy flight from Auckland to Doha with Qatar Airways. How bad can it really be being trapped in an economy seat for 18 hours?
All right, welcome back to another video. We're in Auckland today, and quite frankly, I don't really want to do today's flight. I've got a ticket and I've got a connecting flight afterwards, so we have to go get on board. This is the world's longest economy flight. So I've done the world's longest flight. That's obviously New York to Singapore. They don't have economy seats on their planes. Qatar here does. Oh, God. Rather interestingly,
Emirates operates a direct flight from Auckland to Dubai, but despite Dubai being practically next door to Doha, this flight is only 8th on the list of the world's longest. Basically, if we ignore the top two, the rest are very similar in distance. And this is by distance, of course. Actual flight times are a whole other kettle of fish that we'll get into shortly. Emirates operates their flight with an A380, whereas the rest of the flights on this list are operated by 787s and A350s. If we remove those two New York to Singapore flights, these both use specially configured ultra long range A350s. I went over that in the world's longest flight video. These routes are all able to be operated by fairly regularly configured versions of these jets. And in my readings and my research, these are only occasionally load limited, but generally the Dreamliners, the A350s, and well, that Emirates A380 are capable of flying these legs fully loaded, except in the cases of extreme headwinds or major route diversions due to things like missile threats or closed airspaces. Anyway, we will soon see the top spots of this list being displaced by Qantas's new direct flights from Sydney to places like London and New York in the next few years. But apart from that, I don't think we'll see much change. There really is only a small number of ultra long haul, economically viable routes that exist on this little pale blue dot we call Earth.
generally the process today has been pretty easy. I've got some one world status, so I could use the business class check-in line and got lounge access.
Why does this room exist? It's literally designated. It's designated as the calling room. We've even got a phone here. I wonder. Anyway, we're in first class cubicle 2. Qantas first class lounge in Auckland. It's tiny.
Thank you very much. Oh, Q Suites. How I long for you right now. Alright, on board now. I don't want to do this. But I guess, yeah, let's talk about the seat briefly. Legroom. I mean, it's not a budget airline, so it does exist, but it's not incredible. The guy in front of me's pillow has just fallen down the side because he stuffed it down there. I don't know. So I'm pretty sure from the seat map someone will be sitting on the aisle, but the middle seat should be empty. Should be is key there. I don't know. You never know. Things chop and change all the time, right? So we might get lucky with nobody, or we might have one person, might have two people. Either way, what do we got? 17 hours or something? At least this is Qatar Airways, so the screen's good. I think they do have Wi-Fi as well, so I might give that a go, but anyway, I don't know.
Welcome, Qatar Airways.
I do quite like the beef between Emirates and Qatar, at least with their safety videos. In mid-2024, Emirates released this.
This is your no-nonsense safety video.
And then towards the end of 2024, Qatar released this.
You know, they say a lot of these safety videos are no nonsense. How about we just call it what it is? Unimaginative, uninventive, and flat out boring.
This was a nice touch. Qatar included an amenity kit with socks, an eye mask, earplugs, and a toothbrush.
Alright, we've been in the air for like an hour and 20, hour and 15. A couple of quick things. The woman in front of me is using a neck pillow in the most hilarious way possible. And like 2 rows back, I don't know if it's a kid or a person, a fully grown person, is just watching, they're just like watching something on an iPad with the volume turned all the way up. So this is a bit wild.
Next up, we had the meal service. They were relatively quick with this, and there was 3 options you could choose from. Basically a chicken curry, a beef stew, or a ricotta pasta. I went with a curry, which also came with a rather strange corn, pineapple, coriander salad, some focaccia bread, and a raspberry mousse.
Honestly, pretty good. Pretty tasty. Alright, so in the Lav, first time getting up in this flight, we're like 2 hours in now. Had the first meal service. That was actually surprisingly pretty good. But yeah, it's 5 o'clock New Zealand time now. We're just coming up on Australia. So I've gone to New Zealand now, I've come back. We're just about to cross over Australia, and then obviously off to Doha from there. But yeah, this lavatory, it's quite nice. It's not too messy considering it's been being used a lot. Yeah, we do have diptyque hand wash. So that's pretty nice. And then there's this here, which is like a rose scented eau de toilette. I mean, that's something. It's better than nothing for economy. So far, pretty impressed with Qatar Airways economy. I guess if you're doing the world's longest economy flight, then at least you want it to be somewhat comfortable.
For the next 5, 6, 7 hours, what is time on a flight like this? I just logged in and got some work done on my laptop. You can just about fit a 16-inch MacBook on this tray table. Luckily, the guy in front didn't recline, otherwise it would be game over. Now, the Qatar A350s do have reasonable Wi-Fi. Reasonable in speed, but also reasonable in price. They charge 10 USD for a full flight pass, which I think is about what airlines should be charging. I'm not going to pay 30 or 40 USD for Wi-Fi, but if it's reasonably fast Wi-Fi and it's only $10, take my money. With that being said, Qatar is leading the way with Starlink. They have it installed on all of their 777s and are now moving on to the A350s. Once this is complete and it's on a majority of their fleet, they will, by a mile, have the best Wi-Fi available of any long-haul carrier. Starlink is being offered for free too, and it's gate to gate, as in it works on the ground. I personally will miss the days when planes were an opportunity to disconnect, but if we zoom out on a macro scale, this is a pretty incredible leap forward.
It's practically beef stew in pie form or sausage roll form. We're pretty much coming up on exactly halfway. We just got that little snack beef thing. It was good, but otherwise I've just been sitting there. The Wi-Fi is the main point on this flight. It's usable. Basically, you can do everything on it. I've been listening to like podcasts on YouTube. So the video quality is like 360p, but you just close the tab and listen to it. So that's been pretty good as well. Overall, that's probably the most impressive thing about this flight. The seat is comfortable enough. It's comfortable enough, but not luxurious. I am barely able to stretch out. I am going to try and get a few hours though. We've got about 8 hours to go. I will do a bit more laptop stuff. I think the Wi-Fi stops working over India anyway. Yeah, I'll try and sleep from India through to Doha onwards. Basically, my time zones and everything are super messed up for the next 3 days.
He's wired in. Sorry? He's wired in. Is he? Yes.
Okay, we've got 7 hours remaining. I'm going to try and sleep. The sun should be setting any minute now. I'm not just going to open the window because the cabin is dark. You don't want to be that guy. So yeah, it's 12:42 Auckland time. I'm sort of still on Melbourne time because I was only in Auckland for one night. Melbourne's 2 hours behind Auckland, so really it's like 10:44 p.m. for me. So that's a bit of an early night personally, but I'm going to try and drift off now. Quickly, USB charging. Let's check that out. There's no sort of USB fast charging ports that I can see. There is obviously a standard power outlet there. And then I think on the underside of this screen, we've got a USB port. Just one of them. I can't see what that is, so it is pretty bad. 2.5 watts is so slow. Yeah, with 6 hours and 48 minutes remaining. My phone's on 30%. I don't think my phone will get to like more than 70 or 80. That would be my guess. Come on, Qatar. Do better. Anyway, I'm gonna try and sleep.
Guys, I've misled you here. Whilst this is the world's longest economy flight by distance, it's nowhere near the longest economy flight by actual flight time. I've pulled about a year's worth of data here to really quantify this, and I've picked the longer legs. Obviously there's an outbound and inbound flight for each of these, and generally the ones heading west are the longest. This is not because of the Earth's rotation or anything, it's just due to jet streams. They flow west to east. Hence, when heading west, you'll pretty much always be up against a headwind. Also, that Shenzhen to Mexico City route, it's a bit of an outlier here because that return westbound leg makes a stop in Tijuana. This is not exactly due to the plane not being able to make the distance, but because Mexico City's airport is at an altitude of 7,316 feet, and this leads to the plane being payload restricted during takeoff, hence the required stop in Tijuana on the return. This route just becomes rather irrelevant to our calculations, so let's just forget about that one. Anyway, if we take our longest flight list here and append the longest flight time recorded over the past year and average flight time for all of those flights, we can see that this order is quite a bit different. Let's put them in average flight time order now. As you can see, the top two New York to Singapore flights switch, but are still clearly the leaders, averaging over an hour longer in flight time versus our third place participant. But our Auckland to Doha flight is now all the way down into 7th place, averaging a flight time of only 16 hours and 40 minutes. For the record here, my particular flight came in at 17 hours and 9 minutes. It's still a very long flight. But why is this the case? Well, this list of longest flights is by the Great Circle distance, and this is the shortest distance between 2 points on Earth. But planes are rarely flying that direct route. To again quantify this, I've taken the last 10 flights operated for each route and calculated the average distance flown and average flight times. Why only 10? Well, this required a lot more manual data gathering. I could semi-automate the whole year flight times, but Flight Radar and Flight Aware don't give away the flight distance data so easily. If we compare the average actual distance flown to flight time, the story becomes a bit more clear. Generally, the longer flown distances line up fairly well with our average flight times. Not exactly, but it's very close. The variation is due to the way the jet streams are streaming, at least in the last couple of weeks. I do want to quickly touch on why the actual average distance flown is hundreds of kilometers longer than the direct straight line route. Somewhat obviously, unless the airport's runways line up in exactly the right direction for the route, planes have to take off and circle around in order to get onto that direct path. But this should only add 50 to 100 kilometers, right? So why are they, in some cases, taking routes that are over 1,000 kilometers longer than the Great Circle distance? Well, it all comes down to those winds and just general flight planning. Airlines will generally want to find a route that is the quickest, which may not always be the shortest in actual distance. If we imagine a big jet stream that's blowing along the direct path, this will then result in a massive headwind, and route planners may decide to fly a longer roundabout route to avoid it. This will result in a longer distance flown, but a quicker overall flight time. Things can get even more complicated in the route planning office when they also have to start to take into account potential weather systems that could result in severe turbulence and restricted airspace due to geopolitical issues. Either way, route planning is incredibly complex and probably a pretty exciting job. If anybody happens to work in the route planning department of an airline and wants to give me a tour, please email me at simon@flightformula.com. Anyway, these are all ridiculously long flights. It's crazy that airplanes can stay in the air for so long. It's crazy that people actually buy economy tickets on these flights. Speaking of, let's get back to the flight. I got woken up by the brunch service about 2.5 hours out from Doha. Did I actually sleep? Not really. It was one of those half asleep, resting my eyes kind of naps. It really wasn't my bedtime, but it did at least make the time pass a little quicker. But back to that brunch service, I do appreciate that they have 3 completely different options available. The timing of this flight is a bit strange. You take off in the afternoon, land in the evening, but it's 17 hours later. And so for most of the New Zealanders on board, their body clocks will be telling them that it's 7 a.m. So having options here is the right move. I opted for the most breakfasty of the 3, the scrambled eggs with chicken sausage. It was completely fine aeroplane food. I guess overall, how bad was this experience? I do have to say that generally, Qatar economy is about as decent as it gets. The meals are more than just edible. They have a wide selection of drinks available. The crew are generally pretty helpful and friendly, and the seats are pretty much the most comfortable you'll get in economy. But with that being said, it would have been significantly worse with a random person sitting next to me. So all in, I probably wouldn't choose to do this again. But look, this is nowhere near a Viet Jet or Scoot flight in terms of comfort. Brief point about the in-flight entertainment. Trust me, it's brief. Qatar has a decent system. They brag about it quite a bit in the safety video.
Now you can enjoy your 8,000 entertainment options on your Oryx One. By the way, I should be in 7,999 of them.
But I personally found it to be just okay. They don't have the sort of depth that you find on Emirates, Singapore, or even Qantas. They have quite a few movies, but the TV shows often don't have full seasons and are just a bit lacking. With all of that being said, the quality of their in-flight entertainment doesn't really matter, or at least it won't in the near future. As they introduce Starlink across their fleet, we'll soon be able to watch whatever we want. Bring your own device, bring your own Netflix subscription, bring your own Disney Plus, lock in on a 10-hour ASMR video. Anything and everything will be possible. I don't think the competitors who haven't yet signed up for Starlink realize how much this will boost the passenger experience. It is truly ridiculous to have super fast, unlimited Wi-Fi at 40,000 feet. Anyway, that rant can continue in another video. After that meal service and some TV shows, it was finally time to land in Qatar. I find, at least on these super long haul flights, after about hour number 14, time starts to bend and it feels like you'll never set foot on Earth ever again. So once we did finally land, I just found myself wandering around Doha airport for 20 minutes, remembering what it's like not to be stuck in a metal tube. Kind of like a Temu version of an astronaut returning to Earth. Okay, that analogy was probably quite the stretch. Yeah, anyway, I hope you all enjoyed that video. If you're watching this within the first week of it going live, I'll be on a trip, so go follow me on Instagram to see that. Otherwise, I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.
Simon? Is that Simon?
What's Simon?